welcome to the Dr. Mumbi Show. My name is Dr. Mumbi Saraki, still here with my bootleg, microphone. How you doing? How's everything going? I really do pray you're well in all your ways and that you are living your best life. You have made my day, fam. You really, thanks to everyone. We got a hundred. Hey, I was about to say 1,000. Hey, maybe 100 new subscribers on our Patreon account, and that has really helped, to kind of bolster what happened with the Dr. Mumbi Show. And basically, what has happened is that YouTube has forbidden us from, uploading for a week any new content. We do have a few old videos on there, so you will be seeing some sporadic videos. But thank you for joining us here on Dr. Mumbi Live for the next week, where we will be sharing all the news coming out of Africa, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We continue to be totally consumed by this epic false flag. And, there's a lot of things that are happening across the continent. And it's just so crazy because in the midst of all the drama and the great epidemic that France is facing, they have come out and said that they are going to set aside 1.3 billion euros to combat coronavirus in Africa. And this money is not free. And I think this is what we always need to understand. Like, this is what we need to start understanding. Whenever you see a government saying they're putting aside 500 million euros for Africa, or they're putting aside, 1 billion euros for Africa, there's always strings attached. It's always because they're going to benefit from it. And, this news, in Francophone Africa, it's just like, oh, yes, the French are coming to the rescue again. No, they're not. And what has happened is that their motive literally is to get money with interest, because this money is not being given as charity. Let's not forget, it's probably the country's own money being given back to them in like pittance and pennies, But what has happened is like all the 1.3 billion euros will actually be loans. And the scheme is basically to get money with huge interest and continue to maintain this vicious cycle and this neocolonial system over Francophone Africa. And then they're going to use this money to rebuild their own economies. And yet our media is here celebrating, France to put aside 1.5 billion euros. We need to stop giving such headlines, even for mainstream media. We need to be investigating these headlines and looking deeper into what's really going on. Are we really going to benefit? Are we really going, is it loans? Is it charity? Because there's always strings attached. And one of the greatest mistakes we've made as an African people is not to look at the fine print and not to demand that our governments tell us the fine print. Like a lot of us, we don't even know. Here in Kenya and across Africa, what our government signed as collateral for these Chinese loans. It's only that we made a shot because we were about to lose our Mombasa, port. But those are stories for other days. Anyway, the French Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian, perfect name, he said, we will no doubt have to consider organizing a humanitarian airlift from Europe to transport aid to Africa. Now, Europe, first of all, have you seen how the numbers in France are so crazy? They're so crazy that they have actually introduced a euthanasia drug to, to help like the elderly who may not have ventilators allegedly to die peacefully in their sleep. Because apparently, this pandemic, when you get this COVID-19, whatever it is, whether it's radiation, whether it's, a bioweapon produced in a lab, it's just not clear. And like, there's no Africans who are even questioning the narrative. Our intellectuals, our philosophers, even our juju men. Tell us what it really is if you have any power. Anyway. So, this thing of we're going to have to airlift to Africa, it's just like they are planning for this thing to explode in Africa. And it is absolutely not going to do, and it's not going to do that, but not because of anything to do with our leaders. And that's why it's really time for a lot of African countries to start reconsidering who we have in power, because these people are letting us down. And so basically, France went on to say that they actually called for a moratorium of interest rate payments. They also asked, they're trying to act like they're our freaking Superman, or they're coming, to rescue us, etc., etc. And, they also called for a restructuring of debt in countries where the pandemic will have the biggest impact. It's like they're just, prophesying death and despair. And like, that eugenics plan they've always had, how they always talked about getting rid of like 10 million Africans. I think they're trying to do it with this, but shock on them. And, they said, Africa's aid package would include 1 billion euros in loans. So basically, they're giving you 1.3 billion. 3 billion might be the charity, but you bet that the interest from the 1 billion in loans is gonna more than make up for that point 0.3, 300 million that they're giving you. And then you have like billions in their accounts, and yet you're so happy to receive this money. It's insane. It's insanity. And that's why some of us are feeling like, yo, maybe we need to step aside and allow certain things to happen, because the ignorance on our continent is so widespread. And some people, it's sheer ignorance that's going to take them out. It really is sheer ignorance. And that white savior complex, although that is already like fading, faster than fast. And also the European Union is planning to give 20 billion euros in aid to Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Balkans. But they don't have this money to give, fam. The economy is crashing worldwide, especially in Europe. And when they say they're giving you money, it's to reestablish the same system and keep the same vicious cycle. There is no free lunch. For real. Anyway, let me know what you think about this story. I really hope that, we don't accept. Of course, they're going to accept it, but it's not business as usual in Africa. We are a new breed of African, and we must assert ourselves. Otherwise, these stupid leaders are going to finish us off. Mwah.
To my fellow African diaspora, a very good day to all of you. My name is Ambassador Arikana Chihombori Kwao. Over the past couple of days, I've received many messages, emails, phone calls, and video clippings of the abuse that is being meted to our fellow African diaspora living in China. I've watched in horror Africans roaming the streets of China with their possessions after being evicted out of their homes simply because they're Africans. I've watched in horror Africans roaming the streets with their suitcases and at times with nothing at all, roaming the streets after being thrown out of their hotel rooms simply because they're Africans. I have watched in horror women carrying babies roaming the streets of China with nowhere to go after being thrown out of their homes simply because they're Africans. I've heard many stories of Africans who are married to Chinese being separated from their husbands or wives simply because they were Africans. I've heard stories about Africans being forced to take COVID-19 tests simply because they're Africans. In many cases, these individuals did not meet criteria for testing, or they had been quarantined for the specified time period as mandated by the anti-pandemic laws of China. Not once have I heard any complaints of any African disobeying the anti-pandemic laws of China. Why is it then that Africans are being singled out and mistreated? This situation is not acceptable. It is wrong, and it will not be tolerated. To President Xi, I say, while you have enjoyed good relationships with all the African leaders, it is precisely because of that that you should do the right thing. You are sitting in the big boy's chair, and we are asking you to make the big boy decisions. We're counting on you to make sure that the Africans that are roaming the streets and have been evicted from their homes be allowed to go back home. We're also asking you to make sure the Africans who are roaming the streets because they have been thrown out of their hotel rooms be allowed to go back to their hotel rooms. As we speak, President Xi, may I remind you that we have over 10 million Chinese residing in Africa, where we have welcomed them with open arms. We have allowed the Chinese to establish themselves to marry Africans and live happily ever after in our Africa. Why can't Africans be awarded the same welcome that we have given to millions of your citizens? What is being done to Africans in China is deplorable, and the world cannot stand by and allow it to continue. While we understand that the majority of the Chinese are good people, they're good citizens in China as well as in Africa. However, sadly, among them, there are a few bad apples. A few bad apples that have chosen to give China a bad name. A few bad apples that are making China look bad in the eyes of the Africans. This is a situation that cannot be allowed to continue. President Xi, you are a good man. And we would like the relationship between China and the African governments to continue unabated. But the behavior that's coming from a few of your citizens will not be tolerated. And we're counting on you to do what is right, to do what is just, and to do what is fair. The Africans are no longer going to tolerate this abuse. From the Chinese or anybody else for that matter. The African youth are enraged. We're asking, when is enough going to be enough? President Xi, the power is in your hands. We value, as Africans, our relationship with China. Please do not allow a few bad apples within your citizens to ruin what is otherwise a wonderful relationship between China and the African countries. As a united citizens, as a united African citizens in the diaspora, we are asking you, President Xi, to do what is right, to do what is just, and to do what is fair. The children of Africa are saying, enough is enough. The abuse of Africans at home and abroad, be it in China or on the continent, has got to stop. You may not be aware of some of these abuses, but as a united African citizenry in the diaspora, we hope you will receive our message in the spirit with which it is being delivered to you. You are a good man, President Xi. We trust you will do the right thing. I thank you.